Hello and welcome to the new MYFC Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new My Football Club Podcast. I'm your host, Augustine Sasso. This is show number 6. Can you believe it? I've got one man to thank for making it great. That's Lord Chaz. And you, the audience, for listening and keeping it going. You can email me at augustine.sasso@myfootballclub.co.uk with your comments. Well, the new website is up. That's right, the new website is up. So check it out, myfootballclub.co.uk. Sign in. You should have gotten your password. If you didn't, email the club and you'll get a new password. Well, I've got a great show for you today. I was still on vacation in my head, still in vacation mode last week, and just didn't prepare well. This time I had my questions ready. Charles and I go over last week's game again. You can never get enough of a win sometimes, and this is the case for the road win against Dorchester Town. We talk a little bit about tomorrow's game, which by the time you listen to this will be today, but hopefully not yesterday, against Weston Supermare. Then we talk a little bit about football tactics, thereby showing off what I know and don't know about football. There's another important fixture tomorrow, Dartford v. Bromley. Charles and I talk a little bit about that game, and finally, an off-topic musing, which we could fill a whole hour with. Now, here's my interview with Charles. So, maybe we can start with last week's win against Dorchester. I thought it was a great win, and we needed the points. Tom Phipp from the youth team. Now, is that the under-18 team, or is that from the PACE team? Do you know?
We've worked his way through the youth system, and after the game, Paul McCarthy described him as one of his babies from the youth team. And Paul was very proud of Tom Phipp, Chris Henry, and of course Michael West, who all played a part last week. And the club is benefiting now from the investments that have been made in terms of time and money over the last few years in the youth setup, which Paul McCarthy and Ian Docker have had a lot to do with. And obviously in the past it's produced players like John Akindi, and now those three players that I mentioned, they're regulars week in, week out in the first team, and they're performing to a very good level, and they're certainly not letting the side down, and they've worked their place in the side. So last Saturday, with Liam away on family business, Paul McCarthy was in charge, and he was a very proud man at the end of the game.
Yeah. I remember last year when we were in the Blue Square Prem, the beginning of the season, I can't recall some of the players. They were from our PACE team, but they just couldn't cut it. They were sent back down. I guess my question would be, these young players evidently can play at the Blue Square Bet South level. I mean, they just seem to fit right in. But would they be players that could play in the Prem, Blue Square Prem?
Well, that's $1 million question, and it's one that we don't have to answer at the moment. But certainly this year, we've dropped to the Blue Square South. Players have matured a little, and the events have coincided so that the players are now playing at a level where they look very accomplished. Now, as this side matures, as it grows, and those players learn their craft, one would like to think they're going to improve, and that they're going to be players that will comfortably deal with the Blue Square Premier, and hopefully that will be with Ebbsfleet United, and they'll take the fleet there. It's a big season, and player to go into the side, and people like Chris Henry, he's working a 90-minute shift every week. There may be a point where they hit a wall, and maybe they need to be rested. But so far, so good. They're not showing signs of any fatigue, and they look up for the fight. So long may it continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that is right. The other cliche. I mean, it is a long season, but yeah, I like the results, and there's no reason not to be happy about it. 3 points are 3 points. I was looking at the match report. I didn't get a chance to listen to the game, and I saw that Derek Duncan went out in the second half and was replaced by Clint Easton. Do you know anything what happened to him or his status? Is that something you
Well, Derek
know?
got involved in one or two challenges where he was kind of like making a last-ditch effort to keep Dorchester at bay, and he did very well in doing that. But in so doing, he got trodden on his foot, and it was obvious going towards the half-time break that he was struggling a little bit, and it came as no surprise that he didn't make it to the second half with his foot injury. But of course, in Clint Easton, you've got a like-for-like replacement, and he came in and slots it in. Although it did disrupt the side a little at the start of the second half, but they knuckled down, and they had two very good players on either wing at Dorchester. Nick Crittenden on one side, and on the left-hand side, that a youngster who's on loan from Bournemouth called Danny Ings, and he's only 18, but he was by far their best player. And he really is an outstanding talent who could go a long way in the game. But the Fleet kept close tabs on him, and although he did score their goal, he couldn't do enough to stop the Fleet from clinching the 3 points with a very good finish from Craig Stone with a volley that caressed the underside of the crossbar as it went in about 7 minutes from time.
Wow, yes. And speaking of Craig Stone, now he broke his leg. Was it a year and a half ago? It seemed like so long ago. And now, I just totally forgot about him. But it was about 18 months ago.
Well, Craig was something of a forgotten man. I mean, he broke his leg in a challenge at Wrexham, and it was in a challenge. It was an innocuous. There was nothing that the referee would see as being illegal in the move, but it was with a guy called Andrew Crofts, who's a Welsh international who used to play for Gillingham, and is actually a relative of Craig's. And it was ironic that it should happen that way. And then Craig was obviously rehabilitating after breaking his leg, and he did break down in that process. It didn't go according to plan, and that set him back. And it was a long time before Craig was back on a football pitch. And when he was starting to get fit, it was at a point last season when the Fleet were obviously struggling financially, and they couldn't keep him around and hope that he could get fit enough for first team duty. So they released him from the club, and Craig tried his luck. I think he trialled at Dover, at Maidstone, at Gillingham, but he came back to the Fleet in a close season and has secured a place. And I've got to say, I think the side looks stronger with him in it, and I'm glad that he's back. And I interviewed him after the game, and he was absolutely thrilled with the team performance, the 3 points. I think he's pretty pleased that he's got a goal.
Yeah. And I guess one last thing about the game, unless you have anything else to add that stands out, we had Giuseppe Sol, and he didn't score. Was he effective? Was he? How was his play during the game?
Well, I said hello to Giuseppe before the game because there's a lot of good feeling between him and the ex-Fleet contingent, and it's always good when you go around the circuit to see players that have played a part in the club's recent past, and he had his usual big broad smile on his face, and he also got a very warm greeting from Paul Lorraine, because the two played together when they were at Woking, so they know each other very, very well indeed. But I've got to be honest, in the game, Giuseppe looked like a fish out of water. And when he was going through the middle, he came up against Lorraine, and Lorraine didn't give him an inch. And there wasn't a lot of room for him to work down the flanks because Crittenden and Ings were taking care of that territory. And what was funny as the game wore on, Giuseppe Sol was dropping deeper and deeper to try and get away from Lorraine and find the ball, and Paul Lorraine was chasing him all over the pitch. And Paul Lorraine was sometimes halfway inside the Dorchester half as he tracked back with Giuseppe Sol. It was quite amusing. And in the end, Giuseppe took a knock. That was the end of his game. I think he took some treatment for some cramp, and he left the field. It was a disappointment for him, but I think everybody in the Fleet contingent was very happy to see the back of him because we know what he can do.
Yes, that's right.